Hey guys, tonight we're heading deep into the heart of ancient Egypt. Not into a golden tomb or onto a grand barge, but into something a little smellier. Imagine this. It's still dark. The Nile fog is clinging to the riverbanks like old papyrus, and you're ankle deep in mud, gripping a half-rotted basket of royal undergarments. Yep, you're one of the elite few tasked with washing Pharaoh's laundry. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this week without at least one snake bite and a minor curse. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing how far this little bedtime adventure travels. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up hours before the sun even yawns. Your reed mat is damp with the Nile's nighttime breath, and your back aches from yesterday's linen pounding. A rooster shrieks somewhere far too cheerfully, and that's your cue. Another day, another dozen royal loincloths. Your first job? Fetch water, and not from a clean, charming village well. Nope, you trudge barefoot down to the river itself, bucket in each hand, stepping carefully because the crocodiles here don't clock out. They don't care that you're part of the Pharaoh's Sacred Textile Maintenance Guild, also known as that guy with the wet feet and a soap basket. The river's mist rises around you as you squat on the shore. You glance nervously at the ripples. Was that a fish? Or something with sharper teeth? This isn't just paranoia. Crocodiles were so much of a problem that priests invented rituals to appease Sobuk, the crocodile god. You, however, don't have time for prayers. You're already late. 2 sloshing buckets later, you stagger back toward the royal laundries. Really just a shaded mud courtyard tucked behind the temple's outer walls. The sun's only hinting at the horizon, and already the other washers are muttering. You're the last one. Again, someone snorts, yanking a wad of linen from a hook. You ignore them. You're too busy eyeing the pile of laundry delivered in an ornately carved trunk, adorned with falcon motifs and sealed with wax. Royal wax. There's something uniquely terrifying about Pharaoh's laundry. Not because it's gross, though it absolutely is, but because it's sacred. His sweat is imbued with divine essence. His stains? Untouchable. Literally. You mustn't point to them, let alone complain. There's a whispered tale of a washer who once laughed at a brown streak on Pharaoh's morning wrap. He was never seen again. Officially, he joined the sacred bird feeders of RA. Unofficially, crocodiles. So you work fast. The water's cold, and your hands go numb. You plunge tunics into the buckets, then haul them to the pounding stones. There, you and your fellow launders beat the fabric rhythmically against flat limestone blocks. You hum while doing it. Everyone does. Not because you enjoy the work, though lotus-scented soap does smell nice, but because it keeps away evil spirits. Or so your grandmother claimed. You're not about to test that. As you scrub, you marvel at the sheer weight of Pharaoh's clothing. Despite the heat of the desert, he wears layer upon layer of thick linen, expertly pleated and starched to perfection. And today, there's a special challenge. His ceremonial loincloth, embroidered with tiny gold thread and trimmed in lapis. The kind of garment that, if you mess up, ends with you sleeping inside a tomb. Not in a good way. You use natron to start. A salty, sandy mix dug from dry lake beds. It's Egypt's answer to laundry detergent, and it stings the tiny cuts on your fingers. You've also got a paste of goat ash, crushed figs, and lotus oil to treat the more stubborn discolorations. You don't ask what caused them. You really don't want to know. A little girl, probably no older than 7, sits on the edge of the laundry courtyard, watching you with wide eyes. She's one of the junior linen apprentices. Her job? Guard the laundry line from thieving ibis birds. It's not glamorous, but neither is being slapped with a wing full of bird poop after a fresh rinse. As you work, you realize something's off. There's a tunic in the batch with a wrong embroidery pattern. This one has the queen symbol, not Pharaoh's. You freeze. If these get mixed up, if Pharaoh's chest ever touches Queen Tie's embroidery by mistake, you could all be accused of ritual contamination. That's temple curse material. You motion discreetly to the senior launderer, an old woman with no teeth, but plenty of curses stored behind her eyes. She glances at the tunic, clicks her tongue, and hobbles over. "Swap it out," she mutters. No one saw it arrive. Say it had bird droppings on it. Toss it in the reject pile. And just like that, you've dodged a mystical crisis. Or at least postponed it until the temple scribes notice a missing tunic in their laundry scrolls. The sun is up now, searing hot, and your back feels like it's been flayed. But there's still rinsing to do. So you march to the shallow basins dug into the ground, dump your buckets, and slosh the linens in figure eights like your master taught you. Not too hard, or you'll fray the fibers. Not too gentle, or Pharaoh's divine funk will remain. It's a delicate dance. You notice a pair of sandals near the basin, tall, leather-strapped, with gold-dusted soles. You know who they belong to. One of Pharaoh's palace runners has come to collect a rush order. That means wrapping up 5 full outfits in perfumed cloth, boxed in cedar shavings, and carried with no less than 3 bowing motions per handover. As you shuffle toward the cedar crates, you remember something odd from this morning. The palace trunk smelled faintly of incense. Not unusual, but also almonds, which in Egypt typically signals poison. A quiet chill climbs your spine. Historians still argue whether the inner palace used bitter almond oil in assassination rituals, or if it was just for skin softening. You don't plan to find out. You pack the clothes, seal the crate, and step far, far away. With the morning's load finally rinsed, you string the garments on a tight line between 2 fig trees. There's something kind of beautiful about them fluttering in the hot wind. Dozens of translucent robes, each one stitched by hand, worn by someone who believes the gods literally live inside his bones. You sigh. Tomorrow, more sweat, more stains, maybe more crocodiles. But for now, you wipe your hands on your tunic, stretch your spine, and steal a moment of breeze in the temple shade. So there you are, half drenched, half sunburned, and fully underappreciated, facing down a pile of clothes that could get you cursed for eternity if you so much as wrinkle them. Welcome to the delicate art of ancient Egyptian laundry, specifically the royal variety. Let's talk about soap. You'd think washing Pharaoh's clothes would involve something divine and mysterious. Maybe ground moonstone or priest-blessed dew. Nope. It's mostly sand, salt, and desperation. Your main arsenal includes natron, the miracle mix of sodium carbonate and baking soda scraped from dried lake beds. It deodorizes, it whitens, and it also happens to be used for mummifying people. That's right. When you're scrubbing Pharaoh's loincloth, you're basically prepping it for the afterlife. No pressure. Mixed into this grainy goop are lathers made from crushed legumes, desert ash, and sometimes animal fats. And if it's a good soap day, you get a little lotus oil, which adds that rich, floral perfume Pharaoh loves. The downside? The oil attracts flies like honey on hippo dung. Now, here's the real kicker. You don't get to test the soap on regular rags. That would insult the gods who protect the purity of Pharaoh's linens. You test on yourself. Every batch gets rubbed on your arm, near the elbow. If your skin doesn't blister, great, you're cleared to wash royal underwear. And speaking of that underwear, it's not just some baggy cloth wrap. Pharaoh's undergarments are made of finely woven linen, often with symbols of Horus stitched along the seams for divine support, so to speak. Historians still argue whether these decorations were spiritual armor or just fancy fashion flexes. Either way, one misplaced thread and you're scrubbing latrines for the next lunar cycle. You crouch over a large stone slab, soaked tunics piled beside you. This is where sacred stains meet their match. Some come from sweat, others from ceremonial oils, thick and sticky as honey. And some are, nobody talks about them, but they're there. Even Pharaoh, child of the gods, has digestive issues, especially after 3 cups of date wine and a roasted goose at his feast of divine fertility banquet. But these are forbidden stains. You're not even allowed to notice them. You're expected to wash like a blindfolded priest, reverent, thorough, and absolutely silent. There's a whole code of conduct posted near the laundry stones, painted in hieroglyphs. No pointing, no laughing, no wrinkling nose. There's even a clause forbidding you from referring to any linen as funky in any dialect. The senior washer walks past, eyeing your pile. She frowns at a half-dry loincloth, lifts it to the sun, and sniffs. You freeze. She nods and walks on. You've passed the sniff test. Barely. To make matters trickier, some of Pharaoh's clothes are prayer-stitched. That means they were woven during a ritual by priestesses, their looms doused in incense smoke while they chanted to Isis. That cloth isn't just valuable. It's believed to carry divine frequency. If you tear it during washing, the curse isn't just on you. It's on your whole bloodline. There's a kid in your village whose hair turned white overnight because his cousin ironed a sacred sash the wrong way. True story. Or maybe a bedtime ghost tale. You try not to dwell. You take a moment to inspect a strange yellow splotch on one of Pharaoh's tunics. Could be saffron. Could be something less savory. Either way, you mix up a little paste of chalk powder, milkweed sap, and crushed mint. This is your secret weapon, handed down from the last generation of washers. Supposedly discovered when someone spilled kitchen spice on a priest's robe and panicked enough to invent laundry chemistry. You rub it in gently, whisper a prayer, then beat the spot with a flattened palm reed, soft enough not to fray, but stern enough to show the stain who's boss. A junior worker next to you mutters, "You ever wonder if Pharaoh even notices?" You don't answer. But yeah, you do. Because if he does notice, and something's wrong, the punishment could be public. You've heard of washers being paraded through the city with soiled loincloths tied around their necks as a warning. Displease the Pharaoh, and you'll wear your failure. Still, not everything is doom and stink. Sometimes there are perks. Every few weeks, a priest drops off a basket of discarded royal rags, torn tunics, napkins with burn marks, pillowcases smeared with eyeliner. You're allowed to keep these, not sell. Mind you, that's a death sentence, but you can turn them into padding for your sandals or line your pillow with thread that once touched the royal cheek. And every now and then, a palace scribe slips a note between the folds. Nothing scandalous, just gossip or news from the inner chambers. Queen Nefertari had a rash again. Don't use lotus oil. Or, Pharaoh's dreaming of lions. Burn the red robes. You read these in secret, then toss them in the brazier. It's dangerous knowledge, but kind of fun. Today, there's a note. You find it inside a crumpled kerchief embroidered with a falcon. The message reads simply, use no natron, only river water, from north of the shrine. That's strange. You frown. River water changes composition depending on where it's drawn. North of the shrine, the water has more clay, softer on fabrics, but also less cleansing. Why the change? You look around. No one else saw. You tuck the note into your tunic and comply. After all, who's going to question a falcon-stitched kerchief? If this goes south, you could say it was divine instruction. And hey, at least it's not another burn everything and say nothing kind of day. The heat rises. The wind dies down. Flies hum near the soap basins, and the linen flaps lazily on the lines. You finish rinsing the last item, a thick head wrap with perfume residue, and place it delicately in the cedar drying crate. Then you take a moment to stretch your legs. Your knees crack like sun-baked papyrus. A temple novice comes running. They're sending a guard for collection. He pants. High urgency. Clothes must be bone dry. Of course they must, because Pharaoh's going on a river procession in 1 hour, and he wants his inner garments to smell like sunrise and victory. So you sprint to the line, snatch down the cleanest robes, toss them over the reed frame near the furnace to finish drying. You wave a fan frantically to speed the process. The priest novice joins in. It's a weird moment of teamwork. Both of you flapping like startled storks, praying to every god that the linen doesn't scorch. At last, it's done. You fold the garments with care, pleat by pleat, edge aligned with edge. It's like origami, but if you mess it up, you don't get a second chance. You wrap each piece in crushed myrrh leaves, bundle it in soft papyrus, and seal the crate with wax. Not your wax. Pharaoh's wax. Only his seal can close the deal. Just as you finish, the guard arrives, helmet polished, arms crossed, face set to, I haven't smiled since the last eclipse. He inspects your bundle, lifts one tunic, holds it to the light. You hold your breath. He nods. Then, in a rare moment of mercy, he grunts, not bad. You almost faint from relief. Not bad. That's the highest praise anyone in your line of work can expect. The guard turns to leave. You slump back against the drying rack, sweat pouring down your neck, hands red from soap and heat. Another day, another crisis narrowly averted. And tomorrow, more stains, more soaps, maybe even a new batch of do not mention undergarments. But for now, you're safe. You're proud. You're tired. And you still have natron under your fingernails. You've survived another morning, barely. But don't get too cozy, because now it's time to cross into sacred territory. The place where laundry meets liturgy. You walk past the edge of the courtyard, where sunlight bleeds across ancient stone, and enter a walled chamber smelling of cedarwood, frankincense, and sweat. The temple laundry wing, reserved for only the holiest, most heavily cursed laundry jobs in all of Egypt. Here, you don't just wash clothes. You preserve cosmic balance. No joke, the Pharaoh is not just king. He's literally the human form of Horus, the living bridge between gods and mortals. If he wears impure garments, the universe could tip into chaos. So yeah, no pressure. You glance around at the other workers. Most are women, stooped, sun-browned, their hands permanently wrinkled like dried figs. Many have been here decades, passing down secret techniques like family recipes, how to cleanse a priest's mantle without unbinding the blessing, or which way to fold the ceremonial tunics so they won't lose their divine memory. One elderly washer still mutters prayers as she folds. Every corner a sacred chant. At the center of this temple laundry world is a granite basin, carved with protective hieroglyphs. You're only allowed to touch it after you wash your hands with scented water, spin around once, clockwise, always, and recite a verse from the Book of the Dead. Because apparently, that makes you clean enough to handle Pharaoh's second-tier clothing. You're assigned a bundle. Pale linen, soft to the touch, embroidered in threads so fine they look like whispers. These aren't everyday garments. These are ritual robes, worn during offerings, processions, maybe even funerals. You hold them like they might break in the air. You move quietly to the corner basin, eyes down. No jokes allowed here. No humming. This is a place where talking too loudly might wake a god. You dunk the garment into water mixed with blue lotus essence, careful not to let the threads tangle. The fabric sways in the water like a jellyfish, slow, weightless, a little sad. Historians still argue whether these sacred laundries were staffed by actual temple initiates or just regular workers on holy duty. You don't care either way. What you do care about is not screwing this up, because in this room, errors have consequences beyond yelling. There's a story that still circulates. Maybe it's true, maybe not, about a young washer who accidentally soaked a funeral robe meant for a high priest in the same water used for a kitchen cloth. The next day, he lost all his teeth. Every single one. In one night. Some say it was a curse. Others say he fell down the temple stairs. Either way, you floss religiously now. You move the fabric from basin to drying bench, careful not to let it touch the ground. A tiny breeze swirls in, lifting the edge of the cloth. You freeze. Did that just touch the floor? Is the cloth still pure? A senior priest is nearby, supervising. He sees your hesitation and raises an eyebrow. You hold your breath and pray your linen didn't just doom the Pharaoh's next blessing ritual. Then quietly he nods. Continue. You exhale so hard your knees wobble. Suddenly, a crash behind you. Someone's dropped a basin. Water spills across the floor, soaking a stack of dry ceremonial sashes. Gasps all around. The clumsy washer looks like she might burst into tears. Two novices rush to salvage the cloths, patting them dry with shredded papyrus. The priest doesn't yell. He doesn't have to. His silence is worse. Like R.A. himself is watching. You return to your own task, hands trembling slightly. You soak the fabric in scented rinse water, then spread it over a woven reed frame to air dry. The air here is cooler, filtered through carved stone screens. It smells like old rituals and lotus leaves. Just as you finish folding the robe, crease perfect, embroidery intact, something odd catches your eye. A mark, faint, almost invisible, near the hem. It looks like a sigil drawn in ochre. Maybe a protective spell. Maybe a smuggler's code. You're not sure what to do. You've seen these before, on the inside of some priestly garments, always near the hem. A little curl of color, like a secret signature. Some say they're harmless. Others believe they're tied to rituals no one talks about anymore. You show it discreetly to a fellow worker, an older woman who never blinks. She squints at the sigil and shrugs. Leave it, she says. It's not your business. So you fold the robe carefully, hiding the mark between layers, and place it on the altar shelf for collection. Your job is not to ask questions. Your job is to make sure the gods don't itch when they wear linen. In the next chamber, the linen registry is being updated by a scribe. He logs every item, robe, tunic, sash, loincloth, into a massive scroll, noting the number of folds, the scent used, and even the time it finished drying. You whisper your name, hand over the robe, and wait for the nod that means acceptable. He dips his reed in red ink. Not black. Red means sacred. He draws a tiny bird next to your name. That means you've completed a holy fold. You nod, trying to hide your smile. That symbol could move you one step closer to the inner team, the priests who handle Pharaoh's coronation cloths. But don't get too dreamy, because your next task is anything but sacred. You've been summoned to the linen tangle, the least glamorous corner of the temple grounds. It's where mixed garments are sent when someone messes up the labeling. In one pile, you find a priest's shoulder wrap tangled with a kitchen assistant's apron. Disaster. You have to untangle, separate, and reclassify each piece without contaminating anything. Here, the washing stops. This is about hierarchical textile purity. Every thread has a role, and you're the one playing matchmaker. The system is complex. Royal linen can't touch priestly linen. Kitchen cloths are lowest tier. Offering garments get stored with dried myrrh. The penalties for getting it wrong range from dismissal to full-on snake dreams, where you're said to wake up choking every night for a month. As you sort the pile, you notice something strange. A sheer garment embroidered with 2 falcons instead of 1. That's rare. You glance around. No name tag. No seal. You bring it to the temple scribe. He frowns. Storage error. Possibly Queen's. Then he hands it back. Rewash it. From the beginning. Of course he does. You carry it back to the basin, heart sinking. Another wash cycle. Another hour in the rising heat. As you kneel once more beside the sacred water, a low rumble sounds overhead. Thunder? In Thebes? Unusual. Rain is rare, but sometimes the gods get moody. You wonder if they're annoyed because you missed a prayer or because someone dropped a funeral sash. Either way, you whisper an apology to the sky. Because in this job, you don't just wash away dirt. You wash away the chaos of a universe, one sweaty loincloth at a time. The linen dries and you breathe. For a moment, you think maybe that's the hardest part over. But no, you've forgotten the cruelest phase of all, the smoothing. You don't get to press the Pharaoh's robes with some handy iron or heat wand. Ironing hasn't even been invented yet. No steam, no starch spray. Just a pair of hardened palms and a palmwood smoothing paddle that looks like it belongs in a torture chamber. The smoothing yard is hot, too hot, built with white limestone walls that reflect the desert sun like angry mirrors. It's where Pharaoh's garments go from clean to divinely crisp. You grab a bench, a flat smoothing stone, and a pile of folded linens, each one as temperamental as a pharaoh in mid-feast. You lay out the first tunic. It's long, wider at the bottom, and embroidered in blue and gold across the shoulders. A lion tunic, worn for military parades or when Pharaoh wants to impress foreign dignitaries. The pressure is real. You grip the smoothing paddle and begin your strokes, slow, firm, rhythmic. Like rubbing down an angry cobra that might hiss if the pleats shift. And they do shift. Constantly. The weave of the linen is delicate, high thread count, probably made in the valley loom houses. With just a bit too much pressure, the threads stretch and pucker. Not enough, and you leave creases. You work in silence, sweating into your own collar, while your arms burn with the kind of pain that makes you doubt your life choices. A young apprentice nearby sighs loudly as her tunic snags on a thorn in the mat. She rips the hem. Everyone stops, even the birds. It's one of those frozen moments, like when you knock over a sacred idol or sneeze during a priest chant. She bursts into tears before anyone even scolds her. You hand her your spare cloth. Quietly. You've ripped tunics too, years ago, and cried behind the papyrus bins while pretending to swat flies. But now, you're the one people watch. You're the one folding clean linen like it's scripture. And today, You have a particularly sinister assignment: Pharaoh's heavy ceremonial cloak. It's thick, almost like a rug, and woven with hieroglyphs that spell royal prayers. You're told not to even bend the glyphs. Fold wrong, and the gods will frown on your hands. You'd laugh, but it's too hot and your mouth is dry. You spread the cloak across the long bench, inch by inch. It takes two other washers to hold it steady while you work your way from one end to the other with the smoothing paddle. Every few passes, you whisper a blessing, just in case. A historian might call this superstition. You call it self-preservation. There's a constant debate among scholars. Did Pharaoh actually care about wrinkle-free linen, or was it more about status optics for temple processions? Some argue that smooth garments symbolized cosmic harmony. Others think it was just the royal equivalent of flexing a shiny new watch. All you know is Pharaoh's mother once had a dress refold 10 times because the crease didn't point toward RA. So yes, you smooth, and smooth, and smooth again. Your arms are numb when the priest inspector arrives. Tall, gaunt, eyes like dead stars. He doesn't speak, just walks down the row of laid-out garments. Stops at yours, lifts his sleeve, rubs the cloth between thumb and forefinger. He closes his eyes, sniffs, then mutters, "No deviation." That's the highest praise you'll ever get. The heat swells. The courtyard is thick with incense and linen dust. You watch as finished garments are folded. Not just folded, but ritual folded. 3 times lengthwise, 2 times widthwise, then wrapped diagonally like a bird's wing. Each fold a reference to some ancient concept: order, rebirth, eternity. One woman messes up and folds on the wrong diagonal. The priest sighs. She has to unfold, re-smooth, and start over. From scratch. And then comes the packing. Sacred storage boxes, made of sycamore and lined with cedar shavings, await each completed set. The clothing is placed carefully inside, with sprigs of myrrh and dried mint. The scent will cling to Pharaoh when he dresses, so he smells like a walking prayer. You pause to wipe sweat from your brow, using a corner of your own tunic, which by contrast smells like despair and goats. You dream of soft linen for yourself, sometimes, a clean tunic just once. But those are reserved for funerals, yours or someone rich enough to give you one. Someone next to you mutters, "This would all be easier if we could just fold the garments like scrolls." A risky joke, but you chuckle quietly. In a way, each robe is a scroll. It tells a story, where Pharaoh wore it, what gods were honored, who bowed in his presence. And today, there's a new wrinkle in your shift, literally. The royal infant's clothes have arrived. Tiny wraps, half the size of kerchief. Sounds easy. Nope, they're even more sacred. Because the prince isn't just a baby. He's a god in training. Every crease matters. You take a breath. Smooth the fabric with the softest part of your palm. Fold it so gently it feels like you're wrapping mist. Suddenly, thunder again. You look up. Still no clouds. But the priests are murmuring now. The Nile's mood shifts, one says. Perhaps a flood is near. A few washers exchange uneasy glances. A flood means disaster for the lower quarters, and for the laundry, it means silk contamination. The basins could be ruined, the sacred waters muddied. You rush to pack the last of the garments before the river misbehaves. Linen, cedar, prayer scrolls, perfumes, all bundled and sealed. The temple bells ring once, then twice. A sign. Workers begin covering the exposed clothes with palm mats. Rain is coming. You look at your hands, red, raw, and still trembling. You press your fingertips into the fabric one last time before you close the crate. This is the Pharaoh's world. Every stitch, every pleat, every drop of sweat on your aching spine. And for now, it's done. But tomorrow, you'll smooth it all over again. You wake up the next morning thinking, maybe today won't be so bad. And then you see the sealed scroll. It's waiting on your workbench, bound with a ribbon dyed deep indigo, royal priority. That only means one thing. Someone high up in the palace spilled something, or someone's about to get framed for it. You unroll the scroll slowly. The handwriting is sharp, stiff, and terrifyingly polite. All outer garments from the queen's private wardrobe are to be re-washed, re-scented, and returned by mid-afternoon. A slight odor has been noted. You stare at the words. Slight odor. You know what that really means. Someone's been whispering. Palace laundry isn't just dirty. It's dangerous. Because once your linen leaves the temple, it enters a battlefield of gossip, politics, and sabotage. You remember last year when a ceremonial robe came back scorched. No one ever confirmed how it happened. But rumors said one of the queen's handmaidens rubbed fire bomb into the hem deliberately. As a warning, she vanished shortly after, said to have volunteered for desert pilgrimage. Now you have 4 crates of the queen's clothes, each one smelling faintly of suspicion and frankincense. You lift a silk veil and pause. It's torn, just a little. You check the others. A light purple wrap, smudged with something that looks like red ochre. Paint or blood. You glance around. You're not alone. Other washers shift uncomfortably. This isn't just about laundry anymore. This is political laundering. Don't ask questions, mutters an older washer, dipping a tunic into cold water. Just wash it like it never happened. So you do. You treat every smudge like a memory to erase. You stir up your best soap, natron, crushed juniper berries, and goat tallow, and scrub the stains like they were whispers in the wind. And just when you think things can't get stranger, the guard arrive. 2 of them, armed, bored-looking, but clearly here on orders. Inspecting for protocol breaches, one says flatly, "That's new. No one's ever checked your work mid-wash before." They poke around, lift a veil, sniff a few garments. One squints at the queen's inner robe. "Is that a crease?" he asks. You want to respond, "Yes, because it's drying," but you bite your tongue and smile like a sunburned servant. "It'll be gone before the final press," you murmur. He nods. Then he leans closer and says, just loud enough for you to hear, "Careful who you fold for." You're left standing there, suds dripping from your elbows, spine tight as a bowstring. Was that a threat? A warning? A joke? You honestly can't tell anymore. By mid-morning, things take an even weirder turn. A 3rd crate arrives. No label, just a feather seal. Feather seals mean confidential, usually used for royal espionage or for laundry belonging to foreign visitors. You open it carefully. Inside is a linen robe, simple, unadorned, but lined with a thread that shimmers strangely under the light. Not gold, not silver, almost translucent. You've never seen anything like it. A hidden note is tucked inside. Remove all previous scents. No lotus, no cedar. Use only dried barley steam. Barley steam? That's old school, ancient even by your standards. No one uses barley anymore, except in burial rites. Historians still debate whether such garments were symbolic shrouds or everyday diplomatic gifts. But something about this feels off. You prepare the barley infusion anyway. Steaming hot, slightly sour, it smells like damp bread and rain. You bathe the robe in it slowly, every inch soaking up the strangeness. Another washer leans over. "That's not the Pharaohs," she whispers. "That's the seers." You freeze. the seer, one of Pharaoh's most mysterious advisors, said to predict dreams, summon storms, and read stains on papyrus like omens. You didn't even know he wore robes. You imagined him floating through palace halls like a puff of smoke. You finish rinsing it and hang it to dry in the shade, not sunlight as the note insisted. You feel like you're laundering a ghost pajamas. Then comes the worst part, the inspection logs. Every garment process today needs to be recorded in triplicate. One scroll for the temple, one for the palace, and one gulp for the high scribe. You hate writing. Your hieratic script looks like an anxious donkey did it with a broken quill. But you do your best. Tunic, white linen. Condition, excellent. Smell, barley, hint of mint. Notes, no visible markings. You know that last bit is a lie, because you did see a marking. A swirl pattern, faint, near the neckline, almost a brand. But if you note it, someone's going to ask why you noticed. And then, you'll be the story next week. So you say nothing, and then you hear it. Laughter. Loud, too loud, echoing across the basin court. You turn. One of the young apprentices is holding up a tunic. Asterisk, asterisk, Pharaoh's tunic. Asterisk, asterisk, and he's making a joke. About a stain. A big one. Everyone goes silent. He keeps laughing for another second, then realizes no one's joining in. His smile fades. He looks around. One of the older washers walks up to him and, without a word, takes the tunic from his hands and folds it properly. The boy's gone by evening. No one says where. By late afternoon, you've rewashed, rescented, and refolded over 70 items. Some garments needed scent substitution. Lotus oil swapped with sandalwood. Rosewater with dried myrrh. You don't know why. No one tells you why. But you suspect it's about power. Different scents send different messages at court. Lotus is for peace. Myrrh is mourning. Barley. Well, barley is a mystery. You finish the last item, a delicate face cloth embroidered with a tiny hawk, and seal the cedar chest. You stamp it with the Pharaoh's seal, then whisper a silent plea that nothing inside causes offense, or war, or a faint wrinkle. As the sun sets, the guards return. They don't smile. They don't say thank you. They pick up the crates and leave. And you just sit there, fingers cramping, sweat drying into tiny rivers of salt on your arms. You're exhausted, but also wired. Something happened today. Something big. And tomorrow, the queen will either wear that barley-scented mystery robe, or someone will blame the odor on you. Either way, you'll be here. Because Pharaoh's laundry doesn't stop. Not for curses. Not for politics. Not even for you. You try to sleep that night. You really do. But the barley scent won't leave your nose. And your dreams are weird. Half-formed whispers. Robes fluttering without wind. A hawk staring at you through folds of wet linen. You wake up in a cold sweat. Your first thought, please don't let today be festival prep. Spoiler, it is. The courtyard is chaos. You arrive to find carts spilling over with clothes, rugs, napkins, tablecloths, banners, and yes, even ceremonial towels used for anointing sacred cattle. A junior scribe waves his arms like a sandstorm's coming. 4 processions, 3 banquets, 1 river blessing. All of it must be cleaned, perfumed, and pressed by sundown. You take one look at the mountain of stained garments and realize, this is the Feast of Opet. It's only the biggest celebration in Thebes. A weeks-long whirlwind of dancing, prayers, royal speeches, wine baths, crocodile racing, and public rituals involving half-dressed priests and a lot of myrrh. You groan. You remember last year. Your hands bled for 2 days straight from over-scrubbing Pharaoh's victory cloak after he hugged a dozen sweaty generals. And this year, the weather's even hotter. First up, wine-stained robes. So many wine-stained robes. Dark purples, sticky reds, blotchy like bruises. There's no easy fix for these. You have to soak them in milk, mash and crush celery seeds, then beat them with fig branches to dislodge the memory of the grape. That's what your grandmother always said. Whether it works, who knows? But it's better than trying to bleach it and turning the whole thing an awkward pink. Next, garments soaked in perfume. Too much of it. You think nice-smelling linen would be a bonus. It's not, because temple protocol demands balance. If Pharaoh's robes smell more like blue lotus than the incense burning at the temple gate, the gods might think he's trying to show off. And no one upsets the gods during a festival. You have to unscent them. Soak them in cool river water and air dry them upside down so the aroma doesn't cling. One poor novice dries a perfumed sash too slowly, and the head priest yells, "It still smells like a prostitute." She bursts into tears and drops the sash into the mud. You both pretend it never existed. Then comes the banner cloths, massive strips of painted linen, gold-threaded and stiff with ritual wax. They're hauled in from the temple of Karnak, half-scorched from last week's incense explosions. These aren't just decorations. They're symbolic messages to the gods, flown like sacred flags across the city. You've been assigned to clean one that depicts the Pharaoh striking down Egypt's enemies. It's not just dusty, it's sticky, possibly from honey, possibly from bird droppings. Either way, you're not allowed to scrub off the gold paint, or you'll be accused of desecrating royal imagery. You carefully dab at the edges with a goose feather brush, a slow, mind-numbing process that makes you feel like you're painting a wall with a single eyelash. Meanwhile, you overhear a strange conversation. Two older washers whispering over a blood-red cloak with embroidered jackals. "Did you hear?" One says, "The queen didn't appear at the shrine offering this morning. She hasn't changed robes in 3 days," the other murmurs. The attendants are worried. You pretend not to listen, but your hands slow. Something's happening behind the palace walls. Something's silent. Then someone drops the sacred stool cover. You don't even look. You hear it land with a squishy thud, followed by collective gasps. A priest hurries over. If the cloth touched the ground, it needs to be ritually cleaned 7 times, then anointed with resin and sealed in a cedar chest before reuse. "Burn it," says the priest. "Too risky." So they do. And now you're short 1 stool cloth, which means someone has to sew a new one by hand before sunset, using thread blessed by a moon priest. That someone? Probably you. But first, you have to finish with the holy loincloths. These are trickier than usual. They're marked with special sunburst embroidery, worn only during Pharaoh's river blessing ceremony. Each is cut to exact proportions, meant to swirl in the breeze like divine banners while Pharaoh stands at the bow of his barge and waves at the people. But today, one of them has a rip, right through the sunburst. You show it to the linen scribe. He frowns, strokes his chin, then shrugs. "Mend it with a prayer," he says, "but don't let it show." A prayer mend is the trickiest of all mends. You have to stitch with one hand while whispering an old verse to Thoth, god of wisdom and scribes. You chant as you sew, threading your hope into every loop. You're not sure the gods are listening, but hey, it's that kind of day. By late afternoon, you've soaked your feet 3 times in the cool rinse basin just to stop them from swelling. Your fingernails are rimmed in soap scum, and your wrists ache like you've been holding back the Nile flood with a wooden spoon. You glance at the drying lines, dozens of garments fluttering like temple banners, Each one sacred, each one dangerous. One wrong smell, one missed crease, and someone very powerful will notice. A scribe scurries up. "Pharaoh's boat departs in 1 hour," he squeaks. "Where's his shoulder wrap?" You almost scream, because you haven't done it yet. You dash to the storage chest, yank out the wrap, and drop it straight into a basin of cedar-laced rinse water. No time for gentle washing. You scrub, rinse, fold, fan dry, praying the whole time that it doesn't wrinkle. A fellow washer tosses you her smoothest palm paddle, and you run it over the fabric until it gleams. With 10 minutes to spare, you deliver it to the courier, who's so distracted he nearly steps on your foot as he rushes off. You collapse onto a bench. Your legs don't bend right anymore. But you did it. Somehow. The festival can proceed. The pharaoh will look divine. And the queen's silence? That's someone else's worry. As the drums begin to thump in the distance, announcing the start of the Feast of Opet, you look up at the fluttering lines of white linen glowing golden in the sunset. The wind picks up, the fabrics dance, and for a moment, it almost feels worth it. Almost. You wake up sore. Not just your arms or back, your soul feels sore. The Feast of Opet has barely ended, and already the temple bells are ringing again. This time, it's a royal emergency. You don't know what that means yet, but your gut says it's going to involve linen. It always does. You rush to the courtyard. It's eerily quiet. The other workers are already gathered around the senior washer, who's holding an unopened crate sealed with black wax. You feel a chill. Black wax is rare, reserved for funerals, or purifications, or both. The senior washer breaks the seal, lifts the lid, and slowly pulls out a garment you've never seen before. A shroud, finely woven, trimmed with jet black thread, and reeking, not of rot, but of too much frankincense. It's been soaked in it, as if someone tried to disguise another smell. There's a scroll inside. She reads it aloud. To be laundered before sundown. Unmarked, unscented, unfolded. Unfolded? You feel the shift in the air. This isn't just laundry anymore. It's a ritual of forgetting. You're being asked to erase something carefully, deliberately, without asking why. Historians still argue whether these cleansing rituals were real or symbolic. If linens could be used to cover up acts of power, betrayal, or even assassination. Some say pharaohs never dirted their own hands. Others believe every bloodstain on a tunic told the truth behind a golden mask. All you know is the shroud before you has been worn recently. You can feel the warmth still trapped in the folds, and you're not sure by whom. You wash it anyway. You mix a special solution, lotus root juice, cooled charcoal dust, and a dash of myrrh vinegar, an old recipe used to lift oil and wine while neutralizing ritual markers. You learned it from your grandmother, who said it was for laundering the memories of gods. You whisper as you work, not prayers, just words, the kind that help your hands keep moving when your mind wants to run. Then another crate arrives, this one from the Queen's private attendants. It's filled with mourning garments. And that's when it hits you. Someone's dead. Not just someone. Someone important. Someone close. You glance around. No one says it out loud, but the air is tight with knowing. One apprentice whispers, "It's the vizier." Another says, "No, it was an accident. A poisoning." You keep washing. More garments arrive. Black linen, dark blue sashes, face veils soaked in tears or something meant to look like them. You're told to dry them without the sun. Only firelight. It's believed the sun can erase grief too quickly. You press and fold them, each motion slower, more careful than before. And then something strange, a child's tunic. Tiny, embroidered with stars, and stained. You pause. Who would send this to you now? The scribe steps forward, pale-faced. The queen asks that this be returned to her untouched. You hold the tunic closer. The stars shimmer in the low light. It's damp and cold. You realize it's never been worn. A wash that's not meant to clean. A fold that's not meant to smooth. A ritual without purpose, except to mark the end of something that never began. By late afternoon, you're emotionally numb. The baskets are full of folded mourning garments. Some are purely symbolic. White sashes dyed at the edges. Robes woven from temple thread meant only for processions. Others feel intimate. A hair wrap still smelling faintly of rose water, or a scarf with bite marks on the corner. You're sent to deliver a single robe, deep violet, perfumed with cedar, to the royal dream chamber. You've never been there before. You expected marble floors, golden doors, servants fluttering like sparrows. But no, the chamber is silent, cool, empty. One guard lets you in with a nod. You walk past dark walls painted with stars and crocodiles, symbols of sleep and protection. The floor is soft with woven reed mats. In the center, a small, dark-robed figure kneels by a lamp. You don't look too long. You place the robe on the cedar rack and bow your head. You're about to turn when the figure speaks, softly. Was it folded by moonlight? You freeze. Yes, you whisper, just as requested. A pause. Thank you. You don't know whose voice it is. The queen's? The seer's? A priest of night? All you know is you leave the chamber shaken. Back in the courtyard, a storm brews, literally. The Nile wind shifts. Dust kicks up. Someone says the priests are planning a cleansing ritual at midnight. That means more garments, more incense, more laundering the unseen. You sit quietly waiting. Your hands rest in your lap, stained with natron, sweat, and whatever secrets were embedded in that tiny star tunic. You think of something your grandmother once said. In Egypt, laundry is never just laundry. It's the story you're not supposed to tell. And tonight you've told dozens. Silently. With soap. The next day begins without sun. Just a heavy, sand-filled sky and the muffled bells of a temple that hasn't slept in 2 days. You sit on the edge of the basin court, brushing lint off your knees, staring at the rows of drying linen barely moving in the still air. You're waiting. You're not sure for what. Another crate, another stain, another strange garment carrying someone's silent grief. But nothing arrives. Instead, you're summoned. A novice scribe, barely old enough to carry scrolls without tripping, runs up to you and stammers, "You've been asked for inner service." Your throat dries. Inner service? That can only mean one thing. The Pharaoh's personal chamber. Not the outer temple court. Not the storage sheds. Not the queen's closets or the priest's perfume baskets. This is the core. The heart of the palace. Where no one goes unless invited or ordered. You follow the scribe through passageways you've only glimpsed during supply deliveries. Cool corridors carved with falcons, lions, and looping sun discs. The air changes. Fewer people, more silence. It smells like cedar and old stone. Finally, you're brought into a dim room with towering shelves of folded linen. The royal textile vault. You didn't even know it was real. A voice speaks. Calm, low, step forward. You do. An older woman stands at the table, her hands moving across a robe, so fine it's practically transparent. She doesn't look at you, just says, "This is Pharaoh's resting shroud. You are to prepare it." You blink, but he's not. "No," she says sharply. "It is for rest, not death." Still, you know the truth. Every pharaoh has a burial shroud woven decades before it's needed. Always ready, just in case the gods decide to move their golden puppet off the board. You wash it with milk water, not because it's dirty, but because that's tradition. You rinse it with rose dew collected at dawn. You dry it beside a still-burning oil lamp. And all the while, you don't speak. You feel like you're handling not fabric, but prophecy. As you fold the shroud, 3 times toward the east, twice toward the Nile, once toward the stars, you hear whispers behind you. You don't turn. You just keep folding. Because you've learned by now, your job is to make the future wrinkle-free. Hours later, the palace quiets again. You're escorted out. Not with thanks. Not even a nod. Just a glance from the woman at the table who, you now realize, must be the keeper of the cloth, the highest-ranking laundress in the palace. Back in the temple courtyard, things are different. People stop to look at you. Someone offers you the good basin, the one that doesn't leak. Another washer leaves you a bar of dried honey soap. A scribe bows slightly when you pass. No one says it, but they all know. You handled Pharaoh's shroud. You're part of the secret now. And yet, there's no celebration, no relief, because right then a runner appears, barefoot, breathless. He drops a new basket at your feet. Inside, a soiled loincloth, sweat-stained, twisted, and full of sand. Your hands ache. Your back is screaming. You just folded the most sacred garment in Egypt. But still, the loincloth must be cleaned. You dunk it in the basin, press your palms into the cloth, and get to work. Because this is Egypt, and Pharaoh's laundry never ends. The light fades now. Even the torch flames around the basin seem gentler, smaller, as if bowing to the stillness that comes after chaos. You lean back on your woven mat, arms heavy, eyes blurred from the steam and the salt. Around you, clean linen rustles softly in the breeze like papyrus pages turning slowly in a dream. The night has come quietly, carrying the hush of temple halls long closed, of distant bells echoing across the Nile like fading thoughts. You folded more than fabric today. You folded sorrow, ritual, power, and memory, each tucked neatly into creases no one will ever question. That's the nature of your work. You erase without erasing. You clean what can never truly be clean. You carry secrets wrapped in soft white linen, and no one ever asks if it weighs on you. But in this moment, it doesn't. You breathe. The scent of lotus and cedar clings faintly to your skin. Your fingers tingle with the warmth of sacred water. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, drums begin to murmur again, slow, low, like a lullaby for the gods. You smile just barely, because tomorrow the stains will return, and so will you. But tonight, you rest. Softly now, drift away with the scent of rosewater and the hush of reed mats beneath your cheek. Let the hum of linen flapping in temple wind be your lullaby. Let the weight of the day sink into the earth like water poured from a golden bowl. You've done enough for now. Sleep, washer of kings. Sleep.